So really, it's a very straightforward process. You got the pan that I have laid out over here. That's made pan and filter. It's integrated into itself. I've laid out some maintenance checklists. If y'all have 911s, if y'all want to take one for this model year, front and back, it gives you. One of the things is Porsche recommends 120,000 miles. We typically recommend 60, and most shops do. 60,000 mile service. You see a mix of okay oil at 60 and bad oil at 60. So that's when we typically recommend it. Yes, it's half of what Porsche factory says, but most shops do, and that's what we do too. I came from the dealership. I worked in the dealership for about 6 years. Jake over here, he is actually a master tech. How long you been at the dealership? Where are you? So 13 years, almost 10 years as a master tech. We have him here now. And we have another tech who was at the dealership for almost 15 years. So as far as getting a little background on the techs that work on the cars here, that's what we have. We have a lot of experience, and that's all we do. So as Porsche, we do some BMW. We have a Ferrari master tech. Spencer, who's not here today, he does a lot. He does Ferraris and stuff. But so yeah. So in draining this, if you were say try to do it yourself, and you had your car jacked up, you drain the oil out. After the oil's done draining, you drop the pan, and there's a little if you're interested in do yourself, a little cap on this other side, and that's what a filter plugs in. I'll show you right there. And so that's what actually feeds into the filter and feeds it back into the rest of the back in the pan.
So you replace the pan when you do the service?
Because that is the filter. So yeah, and so usually they sell them as kits. You actually comes with the bolts and the pan. We have the Pentosan, not Pentosan, there you go. The Pentosan aftermarket.
Yeah. So we got some online questions coming in. So just only because it's kind of difficult to kind of keep up with the room while we're doing a live session here. If you guys feel free, if it's a pertinent question, we'll kind of get to some of the questions online after. So with regard to, do you recommend PDK service by mileage? I think we had one, kind of same pertinent question, the 2010 Panamera Turbo. So we'll get to some of those questions at the end. If you have a question kind of, pertinent to what we're doing right now, feel free to unmute yourselves and chime in. Eric and I will hear you obviously and repeat the question for the live audience. And if you guys have something kind of immediately, definitely unmute yourself and ask that, because we want to get to all the questions for you guys.
All right. So I bought this as a kit from one of our aftermarket vendors, just so as a display. Typically we use the Porsche fluid. So unless the customer says, look, I want to keep it as cheap as possible, I don't want to use the Porsche fluid, which is a little more expensive, we typically use the Porsche fluid, the Porsche pan, that stuff. We might order the pan, which is actually an OEM or OES, which is the original equipment supplier, made by the same company, just doesn't have the Porsche stamp on it. So we'll typically use the same pan, saves y'all money, but we'll use the Porsche fluid. I like using the Porsche fluid better just because it's from Porsche. So usually typically a better quality, even though it's made by the same company. So it's still made by Pentosan, but it's just a little bit better, higher grade quality. After dropping the fluid, it's really simple. You literally just put the pan back on with the bolts. They're aluminum bolts, so if you're looking at doing it yourself, you have to replace them. They have a very, very low torque yield. Yep, I'll hold this up. There you go. We're both about 2 foot-pounds.
2 foot-pounds?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. I mean, it's nothing. So, yeah. So I actually have this is what I use. It's a snap-on 1/4 inch digital. Yep. So that can go down to actually 2 foot-pounds. So
Online question real fast.
Yep.
Should a new pan and bolts be used each time?
yes, because the filter is integrated into the pan, and the bolts are aluminum, and like I said, they have a very, very low torque yield. So if you reuse those old aluminum, when you actually torque it down to 2 foot-pounds, you're actually torquing it down to about 3 or 4. So, and the potential of break-in is not that high, but you can. So,
But the
and
kits come with it.
Yep.
Right?
the kits come with the new bolts. So, yep.
I'll answer another question here too while we're at it.
Yeah.
So, in terms of recommendations for the PDK service,
Uh,
time, mileage, what's Porsche recommend? What it's
yeah, Porsche, as I was telling them, the Porsche recommends 120,000 miles, or I believe it's 12 years. We recommend 6 years, 60. That's what we do. A lot of shops do it. Most shops do 6 years, 60. You can do the 120, 12 year, but at 60 miles, if you drop the PDK fluid, you will see a little degradation in the fluid. And the valve body is really sensitive in these to any sort of contaminants or dirt or change in viscosity in the fluid. So once viscosity of the fluid starts to change, you start to see a breakdown in the valve bodies, and especially 12 to about 15, there have been known to be problems with valve bodies. So changing that fluid out at around 60,000 miles, in my experience over the years, I've seen you don't see problems with the valve bodies when you start, as long as you don't have a previous problem, when you start changing that fluid early. So it's just like a lot of guys don't wait 10,000 miles to change their oil in their Porsche. Even though Porsche says you can go 10,000 miles on it, most guys don't. So that's why we recommend a little earlier, just to help prevent any problems with valve bodies and you having to spend, $3,000 on a valve body and the labor that requires that. So.
I mean, 997 actually has 2 service schedules where 997-209 has 60,000 for one of the oil fluid changes, but 120 for the other.
For the clutch, probably. Yeah, for the clutch fluid, which actually on the, because you said it was a 07? 09. Okay, so you have PDK, so you have PDK, yeah. The clutch fluid is actually not accessible on these. So actually replacing the clutch fluid is internal. So you actually just disassemble the transmission to replace the clutch fluid. There's a place where it looks like you can get to it, but you're not really accessing it. So that's the thing, is it says we're replacing the clutch fluid, but you're not really replacing the clutch. I've got that's something I went through with Porsche, because John Gladwell over at dealership at Porsche Plano. He does a lot of racing stuff, and we do some racing prep, and he was having that customers come in and say, hey, I want my clutch fluid replaced. And they said, well, you actually got to drop the transmission and get access to it, and take off the back part of the transmission and replace the fluid. So
How many clutch does this hold? How many clutch?
5 to 6.
5 to 6?
Yep. Now, if you let it drain for a long time like I have, I'm going to have to put about close to 7 in this. So
When you drained it, did you actually take the gear or whatever you're supposed to align with the computer so it'll drain better, or did you just let it drain naturally?
I still let it drain naturally. Yeah. There's a drain plug, right? You're not going to be able to see it, but run behind these hoses is the fill hole behind these hoses up here.
Oh, okay.
So you literally fill it up there. I had that crack loose. And so once you have that crack loose, you allow the air to suck up. Yeah, it sucks the air back up through the passage and allows it to drain out more effectively. If you leave that in, you'll leave PDK fluid inside the valve body. But when it comes time to put it on, put the pan on, torque the bolts down, you fill it. There's a lot of different apparatuses for filling transmission units, stuff like that. Take a picture.
Is there a special adapter to put the fluid in?
Nope, you just use a little hose. Hey Jake, do you mind grabbing that fill hose that has a small skinny one on there? No, it's in there in the oil room. Was that? Yeah, you fill it till it starts to come out, and just as it starts to dribble out, you put the drain plug back in, and you don't have to torque it down yet. You just tighten it up. The one thing you will need in order to do it is a scanner. So that's the only problem for, say, DIY is you have to actually go through a process where you actually calibrate the PDK control unit, and actually what it does is it opens up each of these valves, and it does it in sequential order to where it actually purges any air. So like we have the Porsche tester, you hook up the tester and actually go through the purge system, purge process. Yeah. And you'll hear it go clunk, 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 clunk. And it just purges all the air out of the system. And then once that's done, you literally just, you go back up. Yeah, that's what we use. They make fancier ones. Yeah. It kills weeds too. Yeah. So you can literally go to Home Depot and you can buy this exact same setup. And we have a little hose on there, but you can spend literally, that bleeder over there I have is $600. You can spend the same amount of money on one of these or go to Home Depot and it works just as well. You can clear it out, put every kind of fluid you want in there and stick it in there. When you're after you got it filled up, once it hits 40°C temperature, you start the bleed process, and after bleed process, you go back up and you actually fill it back up with oil. So you'll actually top it off until it starts to dribble out. You put the drain plug back in, torque it down, and you're ready to rock and roll.
Do you mind repeating that? Because I didn't quite understand what you said.
Okay,
you said
so
once it reaches 40°C, and I didn't. After that, I lost you.
Yeah. So you'll want to fill it up with oil. Once it hits 40°C, you'll fill it up. Yeah, as it dribble it out, you'll
It's 40 what?
C temperature. Celsius.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm speaking. Yeah, I'm stuck in metric working with these stars.
How do you get it hot?
Run it.
Oh, you
Start the car. Yeah. You run the car. I'm sorry. You run the car. You let it warm up, and it actually has several different temperatures in there. Its sump value is what it normally shows. The sump value, sump temperature. And once it hits 40 degrees Celsius.
you see that on your scanner.
Yep.
Is what you say.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then you top it off with fluid, put the bowl back in, run the calibration process, and it should be good. After that, you can check it again just to make sure that you got a little fluid dribbling out. You should have a little fluid dribbling out with the engine running. You should have a little fluid dribbling out. Put the drain plug back
You
in.
can actually open the drain plug with the engine running.
Oh yeah.
Even though you've got pressure.
Oh yeah. Because you're not exerting any pressure right now when it's in neutral.
Right.
So all these valves are static. So they're completely static, and you have no pressure in the case itself when it's in static mode. Yeah, if you had it first and you were giving it, give it some gas, yeah, you're gonna have fluid coming out. But just in neutral, it's all the valves are static and you have no pressure in there. It's not like the engine where you've got positive crankcase pressure. So, but it's a very straightforward process that it's literally just. I mean, it really is kind of like just replacing an oil pan on an engine. Only difference being that you have to bleed the valve body once you're done.
How many hours do you charge for this?
You typically about 2.5.
2.5.
Yep, 2 to 2.5.
That's fast. That's a lot faster than I would have thought.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't take that long. So
So what would happen if you don't change?
yeah, typically the valve body goes bad. So this unit right here,
How would I know if I'm driving?
you'll have you'll have not slippage. You usually have a hesitation. So as you come up, what usually will happen is you're coming to a stop. You actually feel it go when you're shifting gears. So typically second to first. So as you're coming down to a stop, from second to first, you'll feel hesitation and a clunk. And a lot of times when you're taking off, typically you're already shifted, you don't realize it, but you're not in first at all. Usually you're already in second on a PDK. When you go to take off, you'll feel a hesitation and then a hit as you're going, especially fast. So if you goose it hard and you get a big hit, like someone just hit the back of the car, that's typically a valve body issue. As it gets worse, it'll start setting faults for the valves. So that's what it'll start doing.
I'll see that on the panel.
Was that?
I would see that on the panel.
Yeah, it'll show up as a check-in joint, usually. Yeah. Yeah, when the valve body, typically when the valve body goes bad, you'll get a check-in joint. And it's usually just for performance.
Can you service the valve body?
No.
Yeah.
There are no parts available for it.
I actually saw that the valve bodies are starting to become available in some of the transmission places, but I don't know.
Oh, for like rebuilds? Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there's people out there that rebuild. We send out a lot of different stuff. Not on these cars, of course, but power steering racks, air shocks. We got a company that we use that rebuilds those, so you don't have to spend 10 grand on a shock. And we've got a lot of companies that we work with that rebuild components. We just haven't had a need for that with the valve bodies. The couple that I've done since I've been here, most of them have been weeded out. The bad valve bodies have been weeded out over the past 10 years. So they had some where they were having problems with manufacturing. So most of them have been weeded out. But typically I haven't worked with anybody yet that I've had to search for somebody to rebuild it. But I know from Porsche, because I've tried to rebuild them, and I know because they're really simple. I mean, they're really just a hydraulic unit with seals and valves and actuators. So, but Porsche does not make available any parts available for the valve body. So you might find them aftermarket, but they're not available from Porsche.
Two quick online questions for you. So will calibration allow for better shifting?
Yeah. So you actually what you're doing is I misspoke earlier. I said calibration. You're doing a transmission PDK bleed. You can do the calibration, and yes, if you do a calibration, you have to be careful because doing calibration. Say you have a tester that allows you to do a calibration. It does, in theory, make your car shift and drive and catch and everything better. But sometimes, as Jake can attest to, you start doing calibrations, it doesn't like it, and it can cause you to have a headache and have to go through several calibration processes before it takes. And then calibration is a completely different topic, kind of, because once you start doing calibration, you have to drive it a certain way for a certain amount of time. It learns how you drive. So if you do calibration, you go out there and you drive like on your track, the car wants to think that you're on the track all the time. So it's going to shift more aggressively. It's going to do a lot of things more aggressively because these things have a PDK control unit that actually has a brain that controls how the car shifts. So it's going to change those shift curves and those shift points for how you drive. So, but doing calibration, if you're having problems saying, taking off and, shifting or you're noticing hard shifts, you can try doing a calibration first and then maybe address something else. But yeah.
I was always told that you can't do basic calibration like in my garage at the house. I had to have certain computers that would be able to do.
Yeah, if you have we have a tester. That's all I was saying. That's a completely different ball game. Yeah, we have the PWIS tester that allows you to do calibration, but we also have an Alltel, which is a generic for everything, and that will do a calibration on one of these.
Calibrated on the rack or on the street?
No, on a rack. Yeah. So
Expanding into one of the online questions, kind of on that note, does the scanner run the calibration process automatically?
no, you have to tell to. No, you have to go in there and deliberate and ask you like 3 or 4 times, are you sure you want to do this? Yeah. And you say, yes. Yeah. So it wants to make sure you want to do it because it runs through a whole process where it does the same thing. It bleeds the valves again. it runs, runs the clutch pack together, and like I said, it changes the torque curves and the timing of the transmission, and basically tries to zero it out because there is wear. There's a clutch disc in there that does wear, and over time, it pushes that closer. So it's not a complicated process, but it can be a headache. So,
If you have a bad valve body,
Huh?
would you just change out the whole transmission?
nope, just the valve body. All these bolts right here, you see these black bolts?
Uh-huh.
Those don't hold the valve body together. Those hold the valve body in the transmission.
Can you get
Really?
that valve body separately,
Oh yeah.
or do you have to buy the whole?
No, you use the valve body separately. It's
That's what I was asking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking if you could rebuild the valve body. No. Oh yeah, all these bolts right here. This literally drops down. You disconnect the valve actuators, and you slide in a new one, and it has a couple nipples on it just like that, and with a couple O-rings on it. Sucks in, tighten it down. There is one thing that is important if you decide to do a valve body, say yourself. There's a torque sequence that you have to do, and if you don't adhere to it, you'll get bleed off. It'll go in crooked just a little bit, and you'll have say one or two, and it'll be shooting off pressure, and you'll have problems. So
So valve body's a couple of $100, right?
yeah. Plus about 3 zeros. But yeah, I think the last one I did was like 2,500 around there. Yeah. So, but that's about the only thing. Yeah. No, but it is about the only, and that's one reason I wanted to show this is because when we were talking about what we wanted to do for a tech session, it's something a little different, and it's one of the few things that if you buy a scan tool, which some guys don't mind, spend a couple grand on a scan tool for the car. If you got the scan tool, you can replace the transmission oil and the valve body yourself. So it's literally one of the only things you can service on the PDK transmission.
So you can't service any clutch. There are no clutches.
Clutch packs.
No.
can't be serviced.
No,
How long are they supposed to last?
technically, according to Porsche, definitely.
But they also said that Tiptronic
Yeah.
fluid was supposed to last.
Well, that's it. We all know how that turned out.
How many miles have you seen on one of these?
The highest mileage I've seen on a 991 was 190,000 miles on a PDK
Without any problem.
without any problems. So,
Since the PDKs first came out to today,
Huh?
what changes have you seen now?
I'm going to add into that because we have an online question as well. So, are there any unique issues or problems with the early PDKs 09 to 12? So, kind of spanning into your question there. I mean, early PDK
Yeah.
versus what we see 991 to newer. What
Yeah.
are the differences there?
So the like I was saying before, most of the issues with the older PDKs have been resolved. So starting in the late model 11, 12 to up to, like I said, about 14, 15, really just in the 14, they had problems with the valve body. They also had problems with what's called speed sensor, which basically it's just checking the rotational speed of the output shaft inside the PDK control unit, and leaks. Yeah. But the temp sensor was more 997 too as well. But the 997, the first gen 997 PDKs, the temp sensor was a big problem. They have a whole repair kit where it actually sits inside here and just checks the temperature oil of the car. Later on, like around 12, after the second gen, when I started going 991, they kind of got that resolved. But first gen PDKs, you have problems with temp sensors. They had first gen PDKs had problems with oil leaks. If you have a first gen PDK and you're not having a problem with oil leak, you probably not got a problem. They happen pretty quick. And Porsche was not allowing us to fix them. They're just putting in new transmissions. So literally just shipping us new transmissions. to put in. So, but other than that, I mean, seriously, there has been they're a bulletproof transmission. Other than the,
Completely redesigned at any point. I mean, it's basically they fixed a few things along the way.
yeah, I mean, like the turbos, the 991 turbos are a little bit because they're all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive PDKs are a little bit different just because you have, a transfer case on them. But other than that, they've stayed the same. The new ones are different. So dot twos, the dot twos, they've changed up. But the dot ones stayed the same from, 08 up until the 16 or 17. So
I have a comment as well with
Huh?
PDK. Is it a true PDK or is it really a DCT?
no.
It's really a DCT.
Yep.
Yep.
Now I have a Touareg,
Huh?
which is the same thing.
So let's see.
And I think it's a great vehicle, but it's got 100,000 miles on it. I've towed an Ear Street trailer that weighs about 8,000 or 9,000 pounds all over the country
Yeah.
without any problem. Probably need to have that transmission fluid changed, right? Yeah. Can you guys do that kind
Yeah.
of work here?
I'll spin into another question real fast. So going back to calibration. So after calibration, which driving style do you recommend for the PDK to learn?
Normal, what your normal driving style is. You want it to learn how you drive. And that was a problem, say that when we were at the dealership, when I was at the dealership and we had customers coming in and say we do a transmission or we do this or we do that, and we need to do a calibration, is they would go out and they drive fast or they drive slow, or it was a husband and he allowed his wife to drive it. And it wasn't how he drove. So when you're driving, you want to drive how you want to drive. So you want to learn your style. And so it's not fast, not slow, it's just whatever your style is. If you go really slow, it's going to learn slow. If you go really fast, it's going to learn fast. And over time, it'll adapt, but it takes some time to adapt. So you'll, after, about, 25 miles or so, you'll notice that shifting differently, driving differently, and it'll take a little while for it to readapt. But so you just want to drive how you drive.
We kind of touched on this before when you talked about, higher mileage PDKs, but the question, how long does the PDK transmission typically last before wear and tear requires significant service? Before wear and tear requires significant service?
It's completely dependent on the vehicle. So, I mean, I've seen cars that have been 20,000 miles, and I've seen cars, like I said, I've seen Panameras with over 200,000 miles on them. Not an issue. So, I mean, it just depends on the car and how you drive. If you're watching it from every single stoplight. We had a guy, because a lot of people know in the Panameras, you actually have a limit on how many times you can watch it.
Really?
I got no thought.
And I had a guy coming in and he was saying, I can't wash my car anymore. And we couldn't figure it out. And so I ended up calling Porsche, did the whole Porsche. And Porsche said, well, do a valve, with a vehicle analysis log, send it to us. We sent it to them. We can't read it. They can. He said, oh, well, he's done his limit of how many times he can wash the car. Where did the time I think it was 128.
Wow.
And he watched the car 128 times in 6 months. So
Wow.
So he was ticked because they said you had to buy a new PDK transmission if you want to keep launching. So, yeah. The new ones, all these are.
I went to the driving experience. They said it could do launch control all day long.
Yep.
On the Monster GTS I drove.
Yeah. When the Panameras came out, they did a lot of stuff like that.
Can you guys still hear online? I got somebody saying the audio went quiet. Are you guys good? Can I get a thumbs up? Good.
When he changed his mic, it changed.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because you pulled the butt out.
Yeah.
But can you guys hear him okay right now?
Can you hear me?
Repeat questions.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Not real well.
Not real well.
Not real well.
Try and take that out real fast. Take the butt out.
The way you had it before, we could hear you real fine.
It
Just
seems-
modified it.
How about that?
It seems muffled. It's kind of a muffled sound.
Yeah, I think it's because of my mask.
Is that a little bit better now?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better.
Okay.
Perfect. And when we have some questions from the live audience, I think we got some people saying repeat the questions because we're kind of spamming in. So yeah, because it's hard for them to hear them, obviously.
Hans.
So question is, what is the PDK service cost?
They vary. Some of them are like your Macans are a little bit less expensive. They vary between like roughly $500 and $700.
So 500 to 700.
No,
That's for the parts that we're just kind of showing you guys here.
So if I brought my 9972.
Does that price include the pan filter?
Yes.
And the Macans are just a little bit less.
Yes, to the online question. So does that price include the pan filter? And the answer is yes.
You do the software updates as well for the PDK when you, because like mine's an 09.
Oh.
It doesn't have any of the updates that have come out since then.
Hey, if you request it, we can.
Okay.
But
Do you recommend the software update?
no, we're gonna keep it what it was. Because you can, like I said, once you do a software update, you have to do calibration.
Okay.
So, and then we get back into it.
So kind of an interesting online question. So I've actually wondered this myself. When you drive, so if you put it into manual mode, is it a bad idea to downshift from second to first on the PDK gearbox? Is it putting additional stress on the transmission doing so?
It depends on how fast you're going, I guess. I mean, if you're, they're made to have the ability to do that, especially if you're on the track. So, I mean, if you're doing it constantly, I mean, it shouldn't be an issue. It starts in second because that's where it likes to be. So, if you started first, you'll start jerking around in a parking lot. You'll start jerking across the parking lot. That's why you should start second. But downshifting into first shouldn't put any unwarranted stress on the PDK transmission.
All right. And I think we probably have the earlier Panamera owner on here. This what's the limit to the number of launches that you said on
I
the
believe, if I remember right,
got it. There you go. So plenty of launches. You got plenty of launch life.
Have you seen any of the clutch wear type issues, especially people who run track or clutch mode?
Yeah.
And then that would just be a new transmission at that point.
So unfortunately, now there are people that do take them apart, but
Repeat that question real fast so online can hear.
so he's wondering if there are clutch issues, especially if you track a lot or you're driving very aggressively a lot. But typically it's track when you're getting the vehicle really hot, you're getting the clutch pack really hot. Yes, there are clutch problems that you do have, and typically when you do, it sets a fault. So you'll know when it does, because we'll start seeing separation of the clutch packs. So it monitors the torque curve between how much power is being input into the transmission and how much power is being output from the transmission. So if it sees that I don't know what the value is, but if it sees a differential, a certain amount between that power curve, it'll actually cause the checking lights to come on.
I actually have a question. How many times have you actually seen that
What?
happen?
Okay.
So
It's actually pretty rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I'm
I
asking.
don't know. But it does happen.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying, but being up here, I think I've seen it like once or twice. So
yeah. So I mean, for
extremely rare.
the online audience, that's a pretty uncommon occurrence.
What? Yeah. No, what?
That's a parts guy.
Yeah. Parts guy right here. I think the last one was like 13,000, something like that, around there.
Is that installed?
They're not fun to do. So they're not that bad, but they're not fun to do. So, but I'd much rather work on 907.1. Do that.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Does this service prevent premature wear on the clutches at all or no?
Absolutely.
So the question is, does the service prevent premature wear?
Absolutely.
So for the track users, basically we're saying, do this service more often.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's why now track is working with Mark. I got a consensus from a lot of track guys that we're doing their PDK services like every 1,500 track miles. So 1,500 track miles they were doing PDK services. And the couple of guys I have that do that, we have one guy, Mark, we got turbo. We got a 901 turbo that he tracks like every weekend. And he hasn't had any issues. So, and he has a 1,500 track miles. He gets done every mile. So, yeah, track mileage is different. If you're tracking it, using a track car, that's different. Daily driver,
Can you pull the transmission without pulling the engine?
oh, yeah. Yep. Pop right out. You sound like it's like a baby. It's like an actor. Just push. You sound into the push.
That's it.
No, you got it. You know, these cars are the first car to do for Porsche to do the coolant integration system. So you actually have these annoying check valves that shut off and shut on the vacuum system. So when you turn your your car, you have a 911, 991. When you turn on your car, it literally isolates your block. So the older cars, you have coolant circulating between heat exchangers and everything else that's circulating except past thermostat. On these cars, it actually isolates the block until it gets warm enough, and then it starts systematically opening up different sections of the vehicle. So transmission, this, that, oil core. It's got valve solenoids here, actuators, and actually controls where the coolant goes and where the coolant stops. So that's why your engine on 901 is going to go way hotter, way faster, faster up to temp than it will on 997 because it has the ability to actually shut off where the coolant goes everywhere else. It's isolated the block. So on the PDK transmission, when you pull this off, you've got all these coolant lines that go to it. And that's to keep different parts of the transmission cool. That's where it becomes more of a headache versus pulling the 997, manual out. So, but, yeah.
Other than the clanking that we talked about earlier, are there any other telltale signs for an owner to say, hey, wait a minute, something's going on with the PDK transmission, I probably need to have it serviced?
Juddering. Yeah. So actually, it's as you're accelerating, it feels like you're trying to go, and then it'll go. Typically, though, the valve light is the clunking. They'll take off from the stoplight, you take off hard, and they go, bam, and you'll feel it actually hit.
Like slamming the transmission to gear kind of thing?
Yeah. Or you'll go down from your decel, you decel faster, and you all of a sudden it'll hit in the first, and that's usually a bad valve body.
I see that sometimes when I go to reverse from a cold stop, where it'll take a second to reverse.
Yeah. And then
Is that normal?
it'll
Is that normal?
Yeah, that's normal. That's completely normal.
Because you're always looking at, is this a normal sound?
Yeah.
Or an expensive sound?
On the sound.
No, because it has to get to a certain point, and then sometimes you're in a weird position as far as the gears go, and then it takes a second for that to kick in, and all of a sudden you go in reverse. Well, it's just like on the manuals when you go up to say, it's hard to get the first. If you say you've been in reverse, you got to go in first, it doesn't want to go. But if you let off the brake and you back up a little bit, it'll go in first. But yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
One more.
No one else. So when you were talking generations, you said the 991.2s and later also were somewhat different.
Yeah.
I guess, like you said, it's more evolutionary through 991. What if anything changed on the .2s and 992s and newer things? Make sure you repeat that question. Yes, sir. That's okay.
Oh, he wants to know what changed between 991 and 991.2. And to be honest with you, I don't know internally what changed. I know that it is an updated transmission, but I don't know exactly. To be honest with you, I don't know
But
exactly.
if you pop the filter, it would look pretty similar to what you see.
Yeah, yeah. It's just the updated internals. That's it. So they fixed because, like I said, they had problems with leaks. Some of them had problems with differential. Very few. So they updated. So like if you look at the differential over here on 901.2, it's a little beefier. So engine's a little bigger, but transmission's a little bigger, but a little beefier. It's got different. I know it has larger heat exchangers, so the oil coolers. But most of it's internal, and that's the problem. Unfortunately, even in the dealership, they'll tell you they don't give you any information. They just say, "Hey, fix it." You know what I mean? So they give you very little information, especially when it comes to transmissions on what they'll do. They'll say, "Well, we put these gears in it, we put this in it," but that's about it. So
I have a very early 991.2, so I'll let you know.
so
So to put this into context, what we're going over, for the most
No,
part,
I
is
would say-
pertinent
yeah.
to 997, obviously PDK, regardless of generation.
Yeah.
It's all, aside from internals, in terms of the servicing aspect, is more or less same.
So I think there's probably some PDK owners that spend 90% of their time in normal mode. There's probably a percentage that spend their entire time in sport plus mode.
Yeah.
If you're one of those more aggressive, enthusiastic drivers that likes to live in sport plus all the time in your PDK, does that add any wear and tear to the PDK, or is that already programmed in and
that's probably
it doesn't matter where you're
I'll
at?
put it this way, I haven't had a problem.
So wear and tear question for the online audience, kind of going back to what we were saying before. So, yeah, obviously track use, you're going to have more wear and tear, right? But
I'll take this street riding, because
Yeah.
I love living in sport plus the entire time, whether on the street or the track or not. So
Yeah.
there's other people that like to just go around in normal mode,
Yeah.
never even push that sport mode.
What really, okay, so I'll say this. The one thing that has an effect on each transmission is a lot of heat. So
A lot of like signals.
heat. So going off the track when it's 105 degrees outside, you have seals on the differential on here and over here. And we have some customers that take the cars out the track in the summer, and we've had problems with they start to seep out. They start to seep out of the differential. You get these transmissions at super high heat, and you have some of the seals that start to wear. But as far as driving around city, never had a problem. Never had a customer come in.
I
and
had
say,
a cracked radiator.
"Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
981.
Oh, really?"
Yeah, and it started leaking down in this area.
No, you're talking about the bottle?
It wasn't the bottom, it was the cap.
The cap? Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, that's new too.
I put a new cap in it, but that was
Oh,
another story.
yeah.
You gotta do some weird stuff.
Yep. You think the engine cover off?
Yeah.
So to follow up on that comment about the extreme heat, is there Porsche or aftermarket transmission cooler or PDK cooler that you can install that to help keep them cooler? Or is
I
there
haven't found one. I've looked it up. I've tried finding we got a couple guys that track them. And because most guys track manuals. A lot of guys do. So the customers that we had that had PKs, I have one that his car kept on heating. And he had to pull over. And because he drives hard. But I tried looking aftermarket oil floors up, and I could not find it anywhere.
I had one, but it leaked, and it doesn't take much to leak, and the transmission was shot,
Yeah.
so I got to buy a new one. So I'm not gonna put an external, and it's like you just said,
Oh, yeah.
it's got cooling, it's got.
No,
cooling,
there
so-
are, there are external ones you can use. But as far as beefier, that's also as beefier OEM replacements, no.
so for the online audience there, so there's external oil coolers or,
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that you can use. To produce
Gotcha.
body, there's a lot of companies that make them.
but no beefier replacements for ones here. Okay.
So when you said between 5 and 7 sports, I think, They could change. How much is still in the tank? Is there a certain amount that it is not going to get changed? Kind of like in the 911, you change like 7.5 out of 10 quarts or something like that.
No, it should, I think, well, I think dry, they say there's 8 quarts in there.
Is there not an oil cooler up front?
Huh?
Oil cooler for the PDK up front?
Well, no, there's the radiator if you want it, but it's not a great cooler up front now. But they have a, you can get a third radiator. That third radiator helps dissipate the heat through all the coolant system, including the PDK.
But in answer to his question, I'm sorry, I interrupted, but you were asking if there's any fuel left in it.
Oh, yeah. So I think dry, they say it's 8, if I remember correctly. So I guess thankfully you know maybe a quart stuck in there. Now, like I said, if you let it sit there and drip, now that's what they'll say. If you take off the valve body, you have about a quart there. Maybe. Maybe a little less than a quart in the actual valve body itself. So if you pull that valve body out, then you'll have more fluid come out. But maybe about a quart that's stuck up in the transmission. So yes, you'll have about a quart to quart and a quarter that are still in the transmission.
Any online questions? I haven't had any online feedback. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and happy to answer.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a 2012 9972, and I had a recent transmission service, and they did not replace the pan and filter, which I know is like a one component. And when I questioned them about that, they seemed surprised that, and really couldn't even answer my question. I mean, wouldn't it be normal to replace a pan and filter when you do the transmission service after, with a car that age?
If you want to repeat that for everybody live also.
Yeah, so he had transmission service done to get replace the pan. And he was asking if, they should have replaced the pan. And he couldn't have an answer for him. If you look at the pan, this right here is the filter. So it's actually built into the pan. So when you do the PDK service, you gotta replace this because the filter is actually built into the pan. So yes, it should be replaced whenever you do PDK service.
And so at this point, since they didn't do that, to replace a pan and filter and lose all the fluid.
You gotta do the service over again. Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Another question typed in here. So for a 2011 911 with about 14,000 miles, should it have the PDK service? So kind of going back to for a 2010 911 with 14,000 miles, should it have the PDK service? So going back to once again service intervals, timing, mileage.
To me,
kind of hammer that one home.
Yeah. So to me, like I said before in the beginning, Porsche's recommendation is 12/120. We did it 60,000 miles. The 60,000 miles is typically more important than the time. You can do it, but when it comes to the PDK fluid, it's a sealed system. So you should not be getting any moisture in it at all. You should not have any change. Now over time, the chemicals in the PDK fluid do break down. So once you hit that 12-year mark, then yeah, I would go ahead and replace it. But before then, I wouldn't see, especially that low mileage, I would see any benefit to replacing it. Yeah, so next year.
Clear your boat out. Can you guys hear us okay? Yeah, somebody give me thumbs up.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thumbs up. Can you guys hear?
Repeat that again.
Kind of wishy-washy. No, worse.
The mechanics audio is just way muted. And
People
so
say audio went down.
very muffled.
Good, better.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you guys hear okay? We split speaker systems here because I got some people saying that audio wasn't that great. So can you guys hear good now? Better? Anyone say something?
You hear me?
As long as you just speak up, thank you.
All right. So did any of y'all have any?
Are there any other questions?
Here, let's see. We got a few more online here. Let's see. Yes. Okay, so kind of, Hansel, this will be a little bit of a question for you. So, have you ever come across an extended warranty company voiding a PDK claim if the service wasn't done at the 10-year mark?
Oh, I doubt it.
No, I haven't seen a PDK claim yet.
So, yeah.
Actually, these transmissions have been pretty bulletproof for the most part.
And if it's okay, I guess if we're done with the questions. One of the things I want to say is, I'm not shop foreman here. Like I said, Jake's been here. Jake, has a lot of experience. King has a lot of experience. You guys hear me? All right.
Good. One more question here if you want to read that. But after
All
that.
right. So, one thing I've been trying to do since I got here is change the idea of we just do performance. So a lot of people think RAC, a lot of guys think back to old roof days, and they think that that's pretty much what we do. We do all performance, high performance. Now we do that. We also do a lot of service. We do Cayennes, Macans, Panameras. We do everything. So we have the experience to do everything. So, we don't just do the high performance stuff. We do all the services and the oops, I hit a curb and now need to rear end. And, we don't do body, we don't do paint, but everything else we do. So that's one thing we're trying to get out and let everybody know is that we're not just a performance shop, we're a one-stop shop for service.
And sales.
You got a lot of experience.
And sales.
I just want to throw that in there. So question here specifically. So should my 2010 Panamera Turbo slip when the car is cold? It seems to take higher RPMs to get going forward on the first start of the day. It's kind of going back to diagnosis.
You need a PDK calibration.
PDK calibration for Jack. It looks
Especially on a 10.
Cool. Any other online questions? Now's the time. Feel free to unmute yourself because we got to do the raffle. Good.
Good?
All right.
Any other here?
I think we're good.
All right. All right.
Raffle time. How do you want to handle that? Like, I got it figured out. Okay, sweet.
All right, everybody, stick around for a couple more minutes. We're going to do a raffle real quick, but before we do, I just want to give a big shout out to Aaron, Tristan, Hans, Jackie, and for being wonderful hosts. So if we can get them a round of applause, please, with a big thank you. Definitely keep Rack in mind for your next service, or if you're looking for a great new additional Porsche, they've got a wonderful inventory sitting over here too. So I wish you were here to see it. All right, let's do the fun stuff.
Sorry, I do have one question not related to the service, but you guys do performance and standard work. So I have a 2016 Cayenne GTS. Do you guys do any chip updates on those for performance?
Well, 16 chips available?
Should be, but if you give them my email address,
Yeah, we'll get you.
email me real quick and I'll
The
send
new
them
ones just started coming out.
Okay,
So we've been trying to keep track of them, but the new ones just started coming out, so we can check. And give you Hans' email, and Hans will check for you and shoot you an email, let you know.
okay. And then for the 12 Carrera S, there's no use in updating the chip on that, right?
Well, I mean, there can be, but with a naturally aspirated car, you only gain, I think it's like 30 horsepower. Yeah, 20 to 30 horsepower. So
Okay.
it's negligible. It's a little noticeable, but it's pretty negligible for the price.
Yeah. So I did catch Hans' answer on the cost of the service on the 2012. Is that between $500 and $700 for the full service, or is that just parts?
Okay, we're gonna send, sir, we're gonna send you Hans's email address. If you just want to take all those questions, send them to Hans. He'll be happy to get back with you with all the answers that you have on your chip tuning and everything else.
All right, thank you.
Cool. All right, cool. All right, so let's do the raffle. Again, we're gonna, RAC has generously offered to raffle off a PDK service. I'm assuming that everybody online in here has a PDK vehicle. If for some reason the winner doesn't have a PDK, I think the RAC has decided to trade that in for an oil change.
Mhm.
So if you win and you don't have a PDK, we can work with RAC for an oil change. Okay. Having said that, winner must be present to win, whether you're here in person or online. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out who our winner is and make sure that they are in attendance. If not, we'll move on to the next person. So what we're going to do, I have the list of everybody that's signed up, and there's a number next to everybody's name. Hans, do me a favor.
Yeah.
Give me a number between 1 and 70.
26.
26. All right. Number 26 is Bob Reich. Is a Bob Reich either in the house or online? Looking for a Bob Reich, R-E-I-C-H. Is there a Bob Reich online? There's obviously not a Bob Reich in the building. All right.
Let's see a Bob Reich on our list here.
Aaron,
You get-
number to 170, not including 26. 5. Oh, I think we're looking good. Is there a Bill McGannon here? There's arm. We have a winner. I'm sorry?
I was gonna claim.
Thanks for holding up. All right, we have a winner. Everybody online, thank you so very much for attending. I hope it was informational as we thought it would be for everybody here as well. So thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Excellent. That was awesome. Thank you very much. That was super.